We'll call the March 2nd, 2020 meeting of the Greenwood Board of Public Works and Safety to order at 5:30 p.m. Roll call, please, Amanda.
Mr. Coleman?
Here.
Mr. Hoover?
Here.
Mr. Rutherford?
Here.
Minutes of the regular session of February 19, 2020 have been distributed to members of the board. Any corrections, additions, or deletions from staff?
Move for approval. Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. First on our agenda and first in our hearts. Fire Department Chief Darren Hall.
Did you hear that, Chief Lap?
Well, if you'd been up here first, John, it might have been a different story.
Thank you. Come before you tonight for ratification of a general order for apparatus equipment change. Essentially what this does is it allows us to have a formalized process when somebody wants to change either a hose load, a type of nozzle. There have been many different things over the years that either innovation or just a change in the way of doing things. This has been an informal process up until this point, and we wanted to put some formalization to it so going forward everybody would know what that process looked like.
Questions for the Chief?
I'll move for approval. Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion
Thank you.
passes. Thank you, Chief. Next on our agenda, Todd Petty will tell us on there. Good evening, Todd.
Good evening. A few things here tonight. The first item and simplest is back in October, the board authorized lease and purchase for 2 vehicles on the general fleet lease. That time, I intended to, and I thought we spoke about it, but I intended to trade in a 2009 F-150 from the fire department, VIN number A84238. While I was reviewing those minutes for another issue, I did not find it in there, so I just wanted to ask the board to make sure I'm doing it right. I'm going to ask the board to ratify that trade-in for a value of $6,500 towards the purchase of the new fire department F-150 on that lease.
Questions for Todd?
So moved. Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Secondly, we've been looking for a vehicle, and I went ahead and committed to get a kind of deal, asking the board to authorize a lease with Huntington Bank in the amount of $35,020 for a 2020 Ford Explorer XLT to be used in administration here at the City Center, and to ratify the purchase of said vehicle.
Questions for Todd on this one? Seeing none, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And lastly, here for street department, they had several items in their budget this year that are designed to go under a lease. I'm asking her to create their lease. That lease will be a maximum amount of $700,000 through Huntington Bank. I've spoken with the controller. He asked to do this in one lease. And in that lease, the approval would, from the board would be what I assume would be a 2021 Kenworth single axle dump truck and plow at $175,000, or not to exceed $175,000. A Wheeler P385B commercial asphalt paver, so they can, there's now won't do what they need to do. So it'd be to exceed $185,000. A John Deere 310 SL backhoe, not to exceed $106,000. A Kubota M5 four-wheel drive mowing tractor to replace their old John Deere that I believe come in here like the second year I was here. But we won't go into how long ago that was. those, at, not to exceed, $50,000. Kelly Creswell, 2000 AL airless palletized paint sprayer, paint machine, new paint machine to stripe the roads for them. Not to exceed $50,000. A Spalding 4-ton hot box asphalt trailer, not to exceed $38,000. And two 2020 Ford F-250 trucks with plows, not to exceed $73,000 for
Each?
the both of them.
That it?
That is it.
How much does that add up to? I tried to do it in my head, but then you got too crazy.
Say 700,000?
The cap on that would be 700,000. I believe this come out to like 677, but I may be off quite.
Okay.
Are you retiring one of the pavers, the existing paver? Is that what you're doing? Getting rid of it, or do you have one?
Yeah.
What is that?
Are you going? What are you doing with your existing paper?
We'll trade it in.
Okay.
Try to get it as trade.
You won't get a lot for it, but you'll get some.
Yeah.
I mean, it's outdated.
And Greg, putting it all in one is what you want to do?
Yeah, it saves us on the origination fees.
Pleasure of the board.
I'll move for approval. Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Kenny. Next, we move to 2284 Sungold Trail in Briarstone, Section 6. Karina Swift. Good evening.
Good evening. Mine is not as exciting.
Well, let us be the judge of that.
I'm requesting approval to install a fence in the backyard. It will encroach the drainage easement. Oh, yeah. But it will not inhibit water flow to the north, which is where the stormwater drain is.
We have, our staff has prepared notes with a recommendation to us on that.
Okay.
And there are some conditions that the fence be constructed to allow for adequate drainage. And if there is a drainage issue that's been created, that you'll be responsible to correct that drainage issue. And the big one is that should any work within that easement be necessary by any of the utilities or the city, the owner, you, would be responsible for removal and replacement of the fence at your expense and further hold the city harmless from, or those utilities for any damage to the fence. And that you call or contact Indiana 811 prior to constructing the fence to the buried utilities. All those conditions acceptable to you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Move for approval, subject to those conditions. Second.
Further discussion? Seeing that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Heck, good evening. Indiana American Office Park, Section 2, Block B, Lot 2.
Good evening, Joseph Heck with Frederick's Plus, here representing County Line Properties for the Indiana American Office Park, Section 2, Block B, Lot 2, here seeking acceptance of the improvements and acceptance of the maintenance bonds, releasing of the performance bonds that were submitted before construction.
Joe, have you seen Paul Cody's memo with, I guess the only recommended condition is receipt of Mylar as-built?
I had not seen those like this.
Okay, receipt of one set of Mylar as-built and a copy of the digital as-built, and subject to review and approval by the engineering division. That motion would be approval for that. That'd be okay with you and your client?
Yes.
Questions for Joe? Not, is there a motion you wish to make? Motion for approval.
Second.
Further discussion? And that's subject to the condition that was in memo. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks, Joe. You're up.
Oh, here.
Come up again on
Thanks, Joe.
Handle
Yep.
Ice Cream.
Here for Titan Construction, seeking the acceptance of the performance guarantees and inspection and testing agreements for their new site at 902 North State Road 135. Also seeking acceptance of the sidewalk and drainage easements and approval of a drainage waiver for downstream easements. I don't know if I need to go over that waiver. Or yep.
Joe, what we usually do is do everything besides the waiver separately. And it looks like, again, that's a unconditional recommendation for approval. And I will move that we approve the request for handled ice cream.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we'll go on to the waiver request. What are we talking about, Joe?
The waiver request is for, it's in the stormwater manual that the flow path of the outlet has to be to a defined channel, regulated drain, or city storm drain, or natural water course. The outside reviewer was questioning, our pond it doesn't really show on this code drawing, but it's kind of like green area in the back. It's a little dry detention area that drains to the south into an existing drainage easement. But once it gets out of that easement, going south, there's no easements. When Carter's was built, no easements was provided. And then south there was O'Reilly's Autos. They have an easement, but it doesn't include the flow line. So the outside reviewer was saying we should have tried to seek getting easements. But those were developed O'Reilly's was a few years ago. Carter's was probably 15 years ago. We got the plans. We looked, there's no easements. So instead of we just go on the waiver route instead of having to try to get these.
Your input?
We recognize that there's really no other release point for this parcel. It's going to be following the same path that it's following right now. So we would recommend that the board approve this waiver request.
Does any portion of this drain out to 135?
It all drains 135. Yeah, the ground drop, it just all flows that way. That's the natural way the ground goes.
Where is this again?
It's,
North of front.
north of Carpet 1, Carter's Plumbing, south of like Jeff Pizza.
Yeah,
They're eager to get started. They want to start in March, so they want to be open by 4th of July.
Probably move that we grant the waiver request.
Second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Have a good evening. Eric Carter, Speedway Fuel Center. Good evening.
Good evening. Eric Carter with Y Engineers. And Speedway is looking to build on the southwest corner of Grand and Main Street. And we're here for acceptance of performance guarantees, acceptance of inspection and testing agreement, and acceptance and execution of a subplat, and then a waiver for encroachment and easements. Assuming you want to do it separately too.
Please. Thank you. Daniel, you've got your staff's got some recommendations here. Some conditions, right?
Actually, there is no conditions on this one. There's just a secondary memo for the easement encroachment.
Where's this located?
Southwest corner of Grand and Main.
If you're looking at the drawing, north arrow's down.
I got you.
I mean, but your Brock's memo appears to have some conditions.
Oh, yeah, sorry. On the easement, for the easement encroachment, it does that those 4 items would be necessary for the.
And Eric, have you seen those conditions? Sign permits being required, signs can't disrupt the flow of stormwater, encroachment agreement prepared by legal department, executed by you and us, and by your honor and us. Plantings, signage, and light poles constructed to allow for adequate drainage. In the typical, if any work in the easement needs to be done, at your responsibility to call 811. All those are okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Pleasure of the board with respect to those issues.
I would move we approve and grant the waiver request on encroachment and landscape, subject to those conditions.
Second.
Make sure we're talking about the same thing. We talk about the waiver request?
You want to handle that separately?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought you said the waiver
Oh,
request.
I might have misspoke, yes.
Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now let's talk about the waiver request.
Gotcha.
Tell us what we're doing here.
On the east side of the property, which would be the west side of Graham Road, there's a 50-foot drainage utility easement. And if you can see here again, north arrows down on this, so it's on the right side of the plan there. We have, I think, approximately 3 trees, 3 light poles, and 4 small directional signages directing the trucks into the site and out of the site. And then at the auto drive, there's the 2 small directional signage, and those are in that 50-foot easement. It's more to the left side of the easement. It's away from, there's an existing water main. We've received utility encroachment letters from all the utilities saying that they're acceptable to this encroachment. So that's what we're planning here.
Daniel? No further conditions?
None other than what are on
Just
the,
talked about.
both pages of the letter. Six conditions.
Questions for Mr. Carter? If not, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good evening. FCL Builders, Matt Freeman. Project Elk. Good evening.
Evening, how are you?
Good.
Just like to request, work outside of 7 to 9 for Project Elk. This will be taking place the month of March,
Tell us what timing would you want to do it?
at 2 a.m. and it'll roll over to about 8 a.m. Concrete pours,
And what kind of work we're gonna be doing?
concrete pours, slab on grade.
Mr. Houghton, can you tell us what's that?
No.
Okay.
We don't really have any residential residents around you.
Now, the nearest house is about 2,500 meters northeast. We're
Dan?
I think the one thing that we would like for them to continue doing is keeping the streets clean there around the project area.
We got 2 full-time street sweepers, a scraper on the road and a full-blown wheel wash with 21,000 gallons on standby at all times.
I'll move for approval. Subject to that condition, they keep the streets clean?
Second.
Further discussion?
And this is just for the month of March.
Just for the month of March.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's go. Lisa,
I just didn't know if there was anybody else.
back to you first. What might be-
Good evening, gentlemen. Lisa Bass, Director of Human Resources. I'm coming to you this evening for consideration of a job description for a part-time planner. This position is going to council as a new position. Started with an introduction this evening. Basically, it mirrors the full-time planner position. However, this one is it's the same qualifications and everything, but on a part-time basis versus full-time basis.
Is this a person we have, do you have somebody in place for this, or this is a new person?
This would be a new person, yes.
Questions for Lisa on this?
I would move we approve the job description.
Further discussion? Is that, do we need to make that subject to council approving the ordinance of creating position, or is that? Yes. So we do, and your motion does, and your second does, right? Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to address us? Molly?
I expect a event notification to come from Planetary Brewing any day now. They're planning on their St. Patrick's Day party,
No, that's right.
which involves a street closure, which the police department has reviewed and approved, and a request for a noise waiver.
And is that based upon what they've actually done this year, or what they've done in the past?
This is what they want to do this year.
Okay.
The only difference between this year and last year is they want to move the road closure a little bit further north to the other side of their parking lot. because they actually, Hoosier Brewing's parking lot, because Hoosier Brewing is open this year where they weren't last year. So they're just gonna move the road closure, and I believe they're gonna have a band in that parking lot until 10 o'clock at night.
And so Hoosier Brewing is on board with this as well? Or is this-
Correct.
Is this a
Correct.
combined effort from both of the companies?
From what I understand, although I haven't seen an event request yet, they keep telling me they're working on it.
You don't want to get any access to anybody.
Right, I just wanted you aware the police department has reviewed it. We are down to notifying all their fellow business owners, but there's no residential.
You probably have some noise or time limits request to make that.
Yes, so, last year they requested till 10 PM. I'm just making the assumption that they're gonna do the same thing. And if anything comes in different on the notification, I will let them know that they're approved till 10 if you approve it, or
Is that a Saturday?
it's a Saturday. It's the Saturday before St. Patrick's Day.
Would there be a authorization to direct Molly to make the final call if there's any modification to the request? I would make that motion with the approval given that Molly would, so she doesn't have to come back to us. Yeah.
Maybe an hour.
Depending on what, in case there's any, in your discretion, you've been doing this a long time, to know if there is something that you think is appropriate, if it's different than what you talked about tonight, I would move that we authorize Molly to make that decision on behalf of the board.
Excellent, and then I'll get a signature from the deputy mayor on the event permit itself.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes. Thank you, Molly. Anyone else from the audience? Chief?
Okay, in your packets, you should have an MOU between Greenwood Police Department and Beacon of Hope. It inadvertently didn't get put onto the docket itself here this evening. If you would,
That was my fault, I apologize.
It's the last on our agenda, Jim.
I got to it manually too, so it's there.
Very last thing.
Oh,
It's very last thing on your bottom of the list of the, there, it's not on the agenda.
We have used them and partnered with them before. They are advocates against the domestic violence, and it gives us a place to direct people other than all the way down to Columbus. So we've used them numerous times in the past few years. This is just the annual update.
Anything different, Chief, than what we've done in the past?
Legal's reviewed it and attached our addendum to make it comport with our other contracts.
And this would be for Chief's signature, I take it?
That's correct.
I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding as presented, authorize the chief to sign on the board's behalf.
second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion
Thank you.
passes. Thanks, John. Anyone else from the audience? Sam, we'll come to you.
First up is IDEM compliance plan status, all's well with IDEM. Next up is consideration of a contract with K&K Fence. This is to build the fence around the new DPW building site.
And is this, will it be a temporary fence?
No, this is the
This will be a
permanent fence.
Okay.
Is it, does that have a mechanism to control access?
Yes.
Okay.
Amount of $141,280.
Correct.
And I request increase to the budget for that project to cover this.
And that amount?
Yes, please.
So if we approve that, make that a two-step approval, gentlemen.
So it's just one gate? No, I'm sorry, there's multiple gates.
Yeah, I believe there's multiple based on the color coding of the,
Yeah, I was just looking at the blue for there.
It's either 4 or 5.
Yeah. I would move that we approve this request and also increase budget to cover the cost associated
And authorize the mayor to sign.
and authorize the mayor's sign.
Second. Moving second, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next up is consideration of a contract with All In Painting to paint the existing DPW building and salt barn.
Also includes power washing the surface before painting.
Yes, it's gonna be lovely when it's done.
You guarantee that, Sam. The salt barn will be lovely. That's amount of $14,905.
For the DPW, $7,200 for the salt barn, $2,200 if a extra equipment is needed.
I'll move for approval of the mayor to sign.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
My final item, I'm sorry. Next up is a request for destruction of property, no longer fit for intended purpose. This is equipment used by CDS that is so obsolete it has no utility and also no resale value.
What is that, CDS?
Community.
Daniel's department.
It's Daniel's folks.
Daniel's,
Yes, community
He's
development.
got a bunch of old stuff there. Okay. I'll move that we grant the request for destruction.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
My final item is related to the Western Regional Interceptor Project. This is approving agreed findings and judgment on the Schwangert parcel. The appraisers came in at 35.4. We proposed settling at 50,400, and the reason for the extra money was a concern about the proximity of the septic system, the work we'll be doing. For the extra $20,000, we are buying piece that we will not be sued if the septic system is disrupted, and they're committed to hooking into the sewer system when it's completed.
Was this what was me, Sam?
Yes.
Yes, I thought it was.
I'll move to approve
And ask for a budget increase on this one as well to cover.
for $50,400.
Yes, please.
I'll move we approve the agreed findings and judgment, and also increase the budget in this amount for $50,400.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is that it, Sam?
That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel?
I have 4 items plus one very quick walk-on at the end. First one is the encroachment request packet. So we're requesting for you to authorize the use of a revised application kit for encroachment requests. The key difference between the old process and the new process is that rather than getting the return letters from the utility companies, the petitioners, the residents would provide a certificate of mailing out to all of those utilities. They would still need to get an actual letter from the homeowners association if that was applicable. And the letters that the residents would send to the utility companies would have to state that they do have the utilities do have the option to come and remonstrate at a Board of Works meeting on a specific date. So that is our request. The reason sometimes the utility companies are slow to respond or they don't respond. So we think this will be less of a burden on the residents. Bottom line, the utilities are still in the easement, so they still have that protection. In terms of costs, will be borne by the homeowners if there's any, or whatever might be needed.
And the mailing is regular mailing, first class mail, or does it still need to be certified?
Let's see, registered. Can double check on that. On that aspect of it.
So we will have to remember, and you'll have to remind whoever's sitting in this chair that whenever we have an encroachment request under the new procedure, we'll have to ask the audience if there's anyone else here on behalf of utilities, I suppose. Okay.
Good point. Yes.
Other questions for Daniel?
I'll vote for approval.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Second item is at Greenpoint Logistics. This one is just a request to authorize the mayor or deputy mayor to sign on the board's behalf O&M manual, operations and maintenance manual for water quality, so that can be recorded at the county recorder's office.
So moved.
Second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, retreat, section 1, this is an acceptance and testing of both the general and the sanitation inspection and testing agreement for retreat, section 1.
Move for approval.
Second. What is this? Is this subdivision south?
This is over on Main Street.
Union Commons?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next is South Point Business Park. They acknowledge of the completion of improvements and also release of maintenance guarantees. They came in not quite a year ago, and there were some concerns whether or not we were able to release the erosion control guarantees. But since that time, there's been some additional improvements made and installed by the developer. The spillway seems to have stabilized. There's no maintenance guarantees needed because it's privately owned and maintained. And so our request is to acknowledge the completion and satisfactory installation of this private erosion control per plan and to release the performance guarantee for this project.
I'll move for approval. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And then my walk-on item, up on screen you can see it's the Main and Meadowview roundabout project. This is just a generic schematic. This is actually for the north side. This is the final parcel. Both the northwest and the northeast corners are owned by the Commons Homeowners Association. And so the offer was actually made to them. We're only acquiring 362 square feet of fee simple right away and using 482 square feet of temporary right away with a total cost of $800. So my request is that you ratify that acceptance, to ratify the acceptance by the mayor on behalf of the board of these offers, and to accept and have recorded the fee simple right away and temporary right away for parcel 3 for this project. And this is actually the last of
So
the
moved.
land acquisition.
Second. Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
That's all I have.
Greg, you look like you've got a pad of paper there. You wanna?
No, that's the docket, so.
Okay, great. Nothing else from you?
I'll move that we approve the claims.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you all. We'll stand adjourned at 6:02 p.m. A lot of signature stuff for us.
Daniel, I've got a question.
Sir.
I know what Mylars are.
PowerPoint is in your,
What does that mean? There's a name.
there.
It's just